so much to all of you for coming. And so now we'll start the presentation. If the students that are presenting can come up. Okay, this is a research study that we're going to present the results. This was conducted by undergraduate social work students in their research methods class. So they have learned how to do research by doing this study that we're hoping will help the community of Carbondale. And this is a part of a number of efforts by SIU. There's some very devoted to engaging with the community and addressing social problems.
All right, so some national statistics would include 578,424 individuals that experienced homelessness in 2014. 49,933 were veterans, and 7.7 million people with in poor households living doubled up with families and friends grew in 2013. 25% of the homeless population in 2014 were under the age of 18. 45,205 unaccompanied children and youth. 10,000 LGBTQ youth experience homelessness in America each year. And here are some statistics, and it's stating how there's actually a lot of homeless households with children in them. In 2015, homeless elementary school students, there were 168. There was 26 high school students that were homeless, and 8% of students were homeless as compared to 2% state average in Carbondale School District. Our people had mentioned that homelessness had come first before all of these other consequences of homelessness: poor access to social services, lack of transportation, and budget cuts, especially in the rural area, poor access to health care, and academic performance is negatively affected, instability at home, and lack of support mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and territorially. And what causes homelessness? There is this culture of poverty theory, and it assumes culture is fixed and unchanging. Once a population is in poverty, it can't change, and puts blame on the poor themselves due to a poverty perpetuating value system. And this has become a foundation for anti-poverty approaches such as the temporary assistance for needy families. Some other causes noted are like in the economy: low pay, lack of affordable housing, increase in poverty, unemployment, and 6 million jobs were lost when the recession began. The veteran status, personal problems, behavioral disorders, substance abuse, and mental illness. And what's being done about it? Nationally, housing provided has doubled in many states. Tiny houses programs in multiple states. Federal funding for housing is at an all-time high, and emphasis on a permanent housing.
Literature review. We noticed a lack of research conducted in a rural area about homelessness. Not too much was found in single-parent homeless families. We reviewed literature about causes of homelessness. Some was veterans that are homeless, released prisoners, mental illness, and substance abuse. It was clear which comes first, homelessness or mental illness, or homeless or substance abuse. Our class project aims to explore these unanswered questions.
So, hi, my name is Stephanie from the biology group, and for our research design, we use mixed methods. So to gain quantitative data, we use survey design to obtain demographics and concrete info. And we also did qualitative interviewing, and we use empowerment research, which gives participants a voice in our research and gives them and asks them for any information that they wanted to provide. And our sample, we use convenience sampling strategy, which due to our time constraint, we interviewed those who were available and willing to participate. And our sample came out to 25 people, and it was 15 community participants and 10 key informants. And our procedures, we then put together a plan for our research and surveys, and then obtained approval from the SIU Human Subjects Committee to conduct these interviews. So for our community members, we did community interviews with people experiencing hardship, and we as researchers went to these planned locations to recruit participants and read a recruitment script to those who were present. And anybody who volunteered, we read a consent statement and then read the questionnaire to these willing participants. So for our key informants, it was sort of the same procedure, but we would call these participants and read a recruitment script over the telephone. And anybody who was willing, we then read a consent statement and then the questionnaire.
Okay, so some of the types of questions that we asked for the community participants experiencing hardships were demographics, so where they lived, where they grew up, the cause of homelessness, what they thought the cause was, what should be done about it, so ideas that they had and what they thought should be done about homelessness in Carbondale. Also, we asked them about their experience with social services. Questions like, did you go to social services and did they help? We also asked about their education, whether or not they got a degree, high school diploma, and then we also asked if they ever would want to go back to school. We asked if they had children and how old their children were. And then questions that we asked for the key informants, which were the people that we called over the phone. We asked what they thought the cause of homelessness was and what they inferred the demographics were for homelessness and what they thought should be done about it. And then we also asked where they were from or where they lived.
These are not statistics from the key informants. This is all from people experiencing hard times in Carbondale. All but 2 people we interviewed had lost their homes. We asked them if they ever had any kind of social services help from any organizations, and 73.3% of them said yes, and a large amount of them said no. When we asked them if it helped, 26.7% of them said no. However, the other 60% of them said yes. But if you combine the no and the somewhat together, that's almost half the people saying basically no, the social services didn't help. The average age for the people we interviewed that were homeless was 39, and majority of them were male. We asked them did they get a high school diploma, and 76.9% of them said yes. Out of that 76.9%, 33.3% of them had a GED, and 66.7% of them didn't. Also, out of that percent, 64.3% of them had attended college. Out of that 63.1% had received a degree. When we asked would they go back to school, 76.9% of them said yes, but 7.7% said no. When asked were they ever married before, 20% said yes, 10% was never married, 40% was divorced, and 30% of them had a partner but were not married, but nobody was ever widowed. When asked about their race and ethnicity, only 7.7% of the homeless people we interviewed were Hispanic. 33.3% of them were African American, 46.7% of them were Caucasian, and only 20% of them classified as other. When asked if they had any children, 80% of them said yes. The mean of how many children there was 1.67. The average age of their children was 10.67. When asked if their children stayed with them, 20% of them said yes, 10% of them said sometimes, and 70% of them said no. If no, we asked who do they live with. 42.9% of them said on their own. 42.9% of them said with family, and 14.3% of them said with both family and friends. Now, with the 42.9% being on your own, let's go back to this. With how old are your children? The average age was 10. So, 42.9%, the average age is 10. Your child's 10, being homeless on their own. When asked what town do they live in, for Carbondale and Marion, it was 75%, and 25% said Chicago. These are statistics based off our key informants. The average age of our key informants was 60. Okay, let me go back. A key informant is the people who know about homelessness in Carbondale that can like help us like get in touch with them, or they maybe been homeless before, or they help them and stuff like that. So the average age for people helping homeless people is 61.86. That's the average age. 87.5% of the key informants were male, and 12.5% of them were female. When asked about their race and ethnicity, 87.5% of them were Hispanic, and 87.5% of them were not Hispanic, but 12.5% of them were. 62.5% was Caucasian, and 37.5% of them was African American. The highest, when asked about their highest degree, 40.19% of them had some college, 14.3% of them had a college degree, 28.6% of them had a master's, and 14.3% of them had a doctorate degree.
Okay, my name's Haley, and I'm going to talk about the qualitative results. Alrighty, so we broke it down into some major themes, and our results are actually combined with the interviews and also with the key informants. So our major themes are personal issues, relationship with community, lack of resources, and a lack of housing. So for personal issues, just wanted to say that the personal problems are created by poverty. Poverty came first to start out with. Physical problems, mental health problems. One of our participants actually said that there are not many mental health options provided for them, and that could be something that we need to work on in Carbondale. Poor decision making, such as substance abuse or not furthering their education. Another participant would really be interested in some educational opportunities that we could provide to the homeless people of Carbondale or people hitting hard times. And then also a lack of sense of responsibility. For also other personal issues are social personal issues, such as violent relationships, rape, agency stereotyping, which is when they go into the agency, they're stereotyped and then not respected, not treated the same way as other clients coming in. Financial mistreatment. We had a few participants actually talk about landlords basically kicking them out of their homes, putting them on the streets, or raising the rent, such as that. Relocation. We had another participant who came down here to actually be with her sister, who was going to school down here, and she just came down here and didn't plant her roots right. Something happened. She is now homeless, and she wasn't able to kind of live the dream of living with her sister down here in Carbondale. Harassment, that could be with landlords or other things. Racial segregation. One of our participants said that to help with that, there needs to be a strengthening of the Black community greatly. Family abandonment and children being taken away from them. Another personal issue is spiritual, just suffering from spiritual blindness. Long-term homelessness, it's like harder to resolve, and there is a cycle of homelessness that people have to overcome.
And then secondly, we have relationship with the community. There's not enough advocacy for homeless people. There's a lack of community involvement. A few things that could be done. Our participants suggested we need to actually do things for them. They can't do it on their own. They need the community to come out and help them and set up programs and organizations for them, or just get them off the streets because they can't do it on their own. Another thing is churches need to collaborate with the Sparrow Coalition. It would just greatly help a lot of people and get them up to date on what needs to be done for the people who need their assistance. Don't treat people with respect, that's another thing. People like in Carbondale had a lot of problems with the safety. A lot of women in our participants that it is who are women need a lot of more safety and security issues. Just having a place to stay would help a lot. So we could do that for the safety issues that we are facing here. And then lastly, people would understand if they talked to the homeless and those in need. So just more awareness in the community. Some suggestions would be public information, again with the awareness. Focus on homeless population should spread beyond the holidays. So during the holidays, you have programs and things set up like just a lot of like Toys for Tots, things like that, that help with people who are less fortunate. Well, alrighty, government action. So stop making homeless a crime. That's a big one. A lot of our participants said that they felt like they were criminals just for being homeless and not having a place to stay. More action on part of the government, which just needs to be just talked about much more. They don't think it's a big problem, the homeless community, but our results here are showing that it is. So thirdly, we have lack of resources. Just a lack of resources would be, personal resources would be knowledge, and that could just be education or awareness. Financial, which is cost of living, budgeting. One of our participants suggested that we could have a management or balancing funds for them, kind of help them out with their money issues and get them back on their feet. Sometimes they can't do it just by themselves. They don't have the knowledge or the resources to do so. Lack of community resources would be lack of employment opportunities. One of the big suggestions we had was entrepreneurship and actually helping them start their own business actually and kind of partner with them or something like that. Also just the community just needs to create more jobs for them. Just give them something, to help them buy food, buy things that they need. Lack of transportation. We actually had a participant who said that for his job he had to walk a few miles a day to and from work from Marion. So that was a big issue. We had like maybe anything that we had. We don't have any suggestions on the screen here, but something to help out those people who need a way to get around town so they could have a job other than in where they live. Churches can't help everyone, which is a big thing. A lot of people think, the church can help, they can help, and a lot of times they don't have all the resources or funding to do so. So if there were more programs, it would help out the churches and kind of alleviate some of that pressure for them to help everyone here. Lack of resources would also be social services. There's limited social services. A lot of our participants had negative or positive or just mixed views or experiences with them. Not sure where to find services. A lot of our participants actually didn't know what kind of programs they were offered in the community, so that's another big issue. And not enough shelters and housing. Some suggestions for what should be done. There needs to be more resources like the Sparrow Coalition, more resources for men like single dads. There's not a lot out there for them. Easier eligibility for food stamps would be a big help. Bigger library with more access to computers so they can get on when they need to, maybe do a job search or just to stay warm when it's cold out or raining.
group kitchens, communal showers, just to help them with getting some food, keeping them clean. More college students need to be accountable for the local community. One of the suggestions was to possibly have some extra credit for them, or to have maybe even a class that offered a credit or two for them to help out their local community and do some volunteer hours. And then lastly, of course, is more funding. And then lack of housing was our last major theme. Some suggestions that we had for that was cheaper rent in the community, or to use empty lots to build apartments and shelters for the homeless community or people who are hitting hard times. Use empty houses to rent to homeless people. Community service in exchange for living here. Another idea was the tiny house idea. A lot of people actually like this idea. Here, as you can see, excellent idea. Tiny houses are needed more in Carbondale. It's just basically just for shelter, but there are communal bathrooms and kitchen as well for them to go to on the site. We put together shipping pallets like this. That was actually one of our participants. They said that they put shipping pallets together for them to stay warm and away from the elements. So if we could do something a little bit better than that, that would be nice for them. Tiny houses would work for families and single parents, and that was another one of our participants. And then another participant said tiny houses can be used for more than homeless people, which is true. It could just be for people who are hitting hard times and need some place to stay. So the tiny house idea would include community garden, some exercise, also some issues to resolve would be such as location and financial. So where to come up with the funds, and where would we put this tiny house location. Some negatives to the idea would be one of our participants wasn't so keen on the look of it. It would need rules. One of our participants said that they were a little worried about the safety of staying there. And also that it could be cold during the winter months just because it is not so much of a house where it's got insulation and everything, but is more of a just a small temporary building. Some other suggestions for what should be done is owning a home with the help of other community members. Not everybody loved that idea. They thought it was a little financially risky, but others did. Converting old school buses and tractor trailers into housing was another idea, and pressure government to provide housing, as always. And then some types of housing needed in Carbondale. As you can see, we kind of need everything just because we have a huge community of people hitting hard times and homeless people who need a place to stay, and they come from all walks of life. They have kids, they don't have kids, they just need, there's a need for everything. So trailers, low-income housing, studio apartments, family housing was a big need. A lot of people said they needed that, and a lot of people liked, again, the tiny house idea. So within our research, we actually had a few participants talk badly about it. They said nothing should be done about homelessness. It's not an issue. It's easy to find a place to stay, and people should just get homes. So that's something we need to kind of work against greatly. We need people to understand that this is an issue, and as you can see again from our data, that it is an issue in Carbondale.
Okay, conclusion. Some of the limitations of the study are interviews were limited to people in Carbondale and only in certain areas of Carbondale. Had to be over 18 or older to be interviewed, so the younger generation is completely overlooked. Small time frame to gather information. Some questions couldn't be answered. We are missing information on SIU students, the LGBTQ youth, and released prisoners in Carbondale. The implications of the results for theory. Most comments did not reflect the culture of poverty theory, although some did. Many factors were found to lead to homelessness, many of them out of the individual's control. Implications of the result for policy. Funding needs to be addressed. Lack of proper funding means lack of resources for the ones who need it. Access to education, counseling, and food stamps. More support for those with disabilities. Resources for men and single fathers. Group kitchens and communal showers. The city of Carbondale. The implications are creating jobs. Don't make homelessness a crime. Address racial segregation. provide safety for homeless people, promote entrepreneurship, and employee-owned business. Housing, more affordable housing in the area. Use empty lots to build apartments and shelters. Tiny houses provide opportunities to buy a home and convert old school buses and tractor trailers into housing. Carbondale Public Library, expand the library, provide more computers. Spiritual leaders, address spirituality with homeless people. Collaborate with the Sparrow Coalition. For the SIU students, we need to help the local community a lot more.
I'm so proud of them. So now we're going to have a community discussion. I would like to pass around a little form to evaluate how helpful this project has been. It's our last step of our research model that we're using, participatory action research. And so on that note, I'd like to ask Maureen Pyle to come up. Maureen is one of the leaders of the Sparrow Coalition, and I don't know if we've explained what that is. I don't know if every...
I'm Maureen Pyle, and actually I wear two hats. I'm the president of the Carbondale Interfaith Council, which is a multi-religious group in Carbondale that's over 40 years old. We were the founders of the Good Samaritan House, an initial response to homelessness to create shelter for homeless people. And we actually encouraged Marlene Shepherd, who is the person who initiated this project, the Sparrow Coalition, to go forward, and it has certainly taken off. Last winter, in February, we convened a visioning for about 30 representatives of the community to look at the problem of homelessness in Carbondale, and particularly the unsheltered homeless. We have been working together intensely on this issue, but I'll give you the mission of the Sparrow Coalition is quite simple. The Sparrow Coalition is a community partnership addressing homelessness and poverty in Southern Illinois. I want to clarify that we are not an agency, we're not a 501c3, we're not funded. This is actually our own action research model, but it was out in the community. It doesn't just have to happen in a research class. We got together, those of us who are concerned about it, and we've been working voluntarily to look at this problem. We are in conversation with government, with churches, with all different kinds of aspects, social services, and some of those people are actually in the room today. So that's just to help you. When you see Sparrow Coalition, know that we are just like this class. We are basically researchers on the problem of homelessness, except we're planning steps, which I hope your research will also lend itself to steps to things actually happening later. We have a panel of our researchers here. I'd like you to introduce yourselves, again, just by your name.
Hi, my name is Lauren Staley.
Blair Stevenson.
Darren Bowman.
Stephanie Burgos.
I'm just wondering if there will be any kind of continuation of this. Maybe that should be to you or maybe the students themselves, because of course, 15 people is a small sample. And so I'm sure you've done a lot of work going, and just to have those 15 in the larger.
So her question is there going to be further research?
Is there going to be extended research?
As far as extended, that would be up to Dr. Reese. I really hope she continues to do this because it has helped us so much. I can't even tell you. Instead of just sitting in class every day in a computer or just writing and being stressed, we get to go out in the community and help. And it's impacted me. I know that I want to continue helping. It's been a blessing, honestly. So as far as research, I hope Dr. Reese continues, but as far as a student, I want to help as much as possible.
Does anyone else want to respond?
I mean, she wrapped it up pretty well. Note that from day one when Dr. Reese sort of came up and said, "This is what we're going to do as a class," I was excited about the totally out there idea of going out in the community and helping. And personally, I feel like that'd be a great. On our own, we'll probably go and further research on our own. And I would love to continue it with Dr. Reese, even when I graduate in May. So.
Wonderful.
Okay, that's so exciting, and I'll consider doing another study, maybe the next step of the research next fall. But one thing I will be doing this spring semester is I'm teaching a policy class, and so I'll have them analyze the policies in Carbondale about homelessness and then make recommendations to the city about policy change in Carbondale.
How much the participation would the young people be willing to help out, as to say, for instance, if a church wanted to open their doors to the community to do things. I know we've done, well, I come out of Davenport, Iowa, and most of the young people that was in St. Ambrose area in the college, and we allow the young people to come in and to help serve, to do certain things in the area for as trying to help. And then even we had some people who was listed as convicts who couldn't get jobs. We had them come in and cook, and was able to serve dinners and make a living that way.
So you're talking about employment opportunities,
Employment opportunities
and in a shelter type setting.
Shelter type sense. And so the other piece is that, do you all have a Habitat Humana in this area?
Yes.
Okay.
Who can answer that question? We have Habitat for Humanity is in this area. Did you have any interaction with them?
Oh, not Habitat for Humanity, but I was going to make a note. I feel that a lot of youth would be willing to kind of participate and be in on that. I know there's a lot of fraternities, a lot of sororities, a lot of organizations that, on campus that would love to go and do something like that. You just need to know about it.
You still have your board at the beginning of the semester, or where sororities and so on and fraternities, where there's a list, there's a community list and a list of projects that they may want to become involved in. Do you still have that at some level? With the student services, does anybody know that?
They do.
Yeah, center service learning volunteerism.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
What
that,
page for
so
that?
that could be a way that you could get your name on that list.
That's right.
Who would he contact?
Me.
You.
Dr. Allen, right here in the room, right here in the room.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Any
I
other
think-
research-related questions?
I'd like for us to have a community discussion about what we should do about the problem of homelessness as a community, and based on the research results we got. Unless there's other ideas.
I'd like to ask a question. Were you surprised at something you saw in their research? What surprised you? Dr. Allen?
Magnitude of the problem? I have no idea.
Yes?
Homeless families.
Let's let someone else speak, okay? Anybody else? Yes.
Children, the age of children and how they were homeless, by themselves.
You were kind of shocked by that, huh?
Yeah, 10 years old, that's
Yes,
Somewhere in your research, people said homelessness is not an issue. I'm trying to figure out why do people think that homelessness is not an issue.
Let's say what you have to say. Would you like to respond to that one?
And why do people say that they should just get a home?
I think it's more like an effect of ignorance. Like people just only see what they want to see, so maybe they kind of overlook the idea of someone being homeless. But I know for me as an individual, after starting with research, I started to be more aware of what's around me, and I have noticed more that there is a bigger problem than people make it out to be. And it's like just, yeah, I think it's just more of awareness. If we get the word out to these individuals and show them what's out there, maybe they can get the same idea as we have. It's just all about getting the word out.
So are you guys prepared to, I just moved here, I've been here a week, so all my questions might be redundant or you've heard this before, but in the community, in the paper, did it give an explanation, or was some of your findings in the paper that says to make people aware that homelessness is an issue to help people get past that ignorance?
Yeah, this would be like, pretty much the paper will probably be part of the first step of actually getting the word out. A lot of putting the pressure on, maybe more individuals start realizing this versus kind of ignoring the issue itself, and maybe not think that a crime more of an actual epidemic, such as anything else going on in the world today.
I'd like to ask each one of you, how did your thinking change from the beginning to the end? Would you start with you?
Okay, it's changed significantly. So I'm from around here. I'm from Marion, Illinois. I've been here my whole life. Throughout my childhood, I used to see random people standing on a corner, that type of thing. You're kind of oblivious to it, as bad as that sounds. You don't think it's such a big deal until we looked into it. So we assume that just a couple people are standing trying to get money. You don't realize how many there really are. For example, just people staying in the woods or sleeping on a bench. You honestly have no idea how many people out there are homeless. So it's impacted me a lot.
and I want to help as much as I can because I had no idea.
How did you change?
I think I've just been humbled by the whole situation, honestly. I mean, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and that's where I grew up. And I mean, I've seen homelessness. I did a lot of volunteer work in St. Louis when I was in high school and before that. But I think like it just made me forget about all like the negative like aspects that people have towards homeless people. Like you don't know their real story. And like that's something I experienced when I did my interview at Bethel AME at the soup kitchen there. Like I got to know the person's real story and what's really behind like why they are homeless and why they are experiencing hard times. So I think that's just kind of what changed me, like realizing the true issues that are behind a homeless person.
Honestly, like, I guess something that changed about me because I always felt like this, that something like this needs to be done. I'm living from South Chicago, you know, going downtown, I see homeless people living a lot, especially people experiencing hard times. And I always try to do what I can, even though I don't have much, especially when I was at a young age, I couldn't really do a lot. But being like my age now, even the little bit I have, I would try to do something for someone. Even though other people around me think like the person's just bothering me, but that's not the case. Well, you have to do something or nothing's going to change at all.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm kind of in the same case as he is, where I grew up in Chicago, and I kind of had friends that were dealt with homelessness and dealt with hard times, and since it was always around me, I didn't think, it was kind of like a blinder sort of thing, like, oh, it just kind of happens, I can try to help as much as I possibly can, you know, maybe they can stay with my family and me, sort of stuff. But when we looked more into the research, it didn't dawn on me until then how bad like hard times and homelessness is, and how many different stories there really is other than just financial issues or a bad home. Like there's way more things going on than just that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, Brother Brown.
This panel needs to be filmed for public television.
Yeah. Actually, they're being filmed right now.
Yeah, but I mean for a public television station show, from the student's point of view, what you've done here and a conversation with one of the people. Jack Tishner says he's retired, but he isn't, so talk to him.
Diana?
I'm just wondering how
Diana's the public librarian director.
Yeah. I was wondering how you identified your key informants. How did you find these people? What were their qualifications to be key informants?
I mean, I didn't interview a key informant, but we've just known them to be somebody that's knowledgeable in the community about homelessness and hard times. I mean, some of them are here that we interviewed, but I mean,
we can't reveal who participated.
Yeah, but
it was people that we knew of that were knowledgeable about the problem in our community.
Yes. Anybody before we enter another one? Okay, go ahead.
In your research, you said that people feel like homelessness is a crime. Can you explain that?
Is or isn't a crime? Is
a crime.
Oh, a crime.
You want to answer that?
Yeah, I interviewed a kid for he actually worked with homelessness, and he hired them with his construction company. He was previously homeless, and he was saying that people would be sleeping on benches or like, you know, trying to find shelter in buildings and get arrested. And he was just basically saying that it shouldn't be a crime because they don't have anywhere to go. So it's not like they were necessarily trying to break the law, they just needed shelter.
And there's also the situation about there's laws in certain states, certain places that peddling or like trying to ask for money is a crime, where if you're caught doing it and it's literally said to get rid of the homeless. The government actually said it's
Well, Kate, hold on. This man back here I want to acknowledge. Your question?
No, it was an answer.
An answer?
To her question. One of the issues about with homelessness is that when you're homeless and you try applying to a job, you're judged immediately. Like, when they tell you, do you have a resume, do you have a form? And like saying, for most homeless, they don't have a place to stay. They live, like, as we said, they either live in the woods, live in an apartment, live wherever they can. And one of the requirements for said jobs is that you need a place of residency, a place to stay. If you don't have a place to stay, you can't get a job. Like, you can't get a place to stay if you don't have a job. It's like a catch-22.
But I think, Mike, does Good Sam's provide an address for people?
I'm sorry?
Good Samaritan provides an address if a person's
Oh,
homeless.
absolutely, yeah. Phone number and an address, and they can commute. They gotta have a phone number. If they're gonna offer them a job, they need to have.
So they can use Good Samaritan House
Right.
address.
Now, is that with people that are there, or can anybody?
The ones who are there. No,
Only the
we
ones
can't-
that are there.
we
You don't
can't-
offer that to.
No.
Well, we
outside.
couldn't maintain it, first of all.
Yeah.
Because once we don't have contact, things become obsolete very quickly.
Okay, so he's identified a very important point, is that a homeless person doesn't have an identity or a place, a residence, a phone number, and sort of even finding a job is difficult for them. Yes, Kathy?
I didn't get to hear the first part of it, and I really apologize. I got stuck by a train. And
We heard it.
Here from Burns and Kevin. So I don't know what statistics you have about people who are actually working that are homeless, because that is a large percentage of the homeless. They already have jobs. We have a situation in this country where people can't afford the housing. There's not affordable housing anymore. So I don't know if you would talk to that, but I just wanted to point that out. That was one of my situations.
Yes.
What's surprising to me is something that it's a college town, it's a big university, and I'm sure most of the business here make their money from the college students. And like, I don't know if it's a question or comment, but where is all the money going to in this town? They're not providing enough jobs for people to get, jobs and be able to afford it.
And we know that's a very complex, I mean, we're going to let other people talk, okay?
I came from Chicago
Yeah.
with a career job, and I quit that career job to come back to school and finish my education. And I thought it wouldn't be no problem getting a job or whatever, but I'm having a hard time too. I do have a home with my boyfriend. We having a hard time as well.
Okay.
And like these minimum wage jobs, no help. They don't give you any hours. And it's just confusing to me. Like, you go to any university, you see the town, they like building things, they providing employment. It's just, where is the money going?
So there's not enough employment opportunity even for a student. Yes. Kathy?
I just wanted to say I'm taking notes about this. Some of these are good research questions for the next study, and Kathy, yours is. I got that down. We didn't look at are you working but still homeless. We didn't look at that, but we will next time.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing that I learned from this project, and like to go off what you said, is like that there's just different levels of homelessness, and like things like the Good Samaritan House, like that's really important. Like halfway houses are really important too, just because some people really just need an address and they just really just need to go take a shower. Like, I mean, they're still homeless, but that's, a service that you can offer them.
Yes.
The question I have is on the spiritual side. In your aspect, in your research, what do you think the churches can do?
What do you think the churches can do in terms of spiritually supporting the homeless?
I guess, like, for me, I guess providing some type of guidance in a situation. I know if I've been homeless before, and like, I always keep my faith, and it helps keep my head up in certain situations. I guess, like, what church can do is just provide that, I guess, that guidance they need. If they feel like they have nowhere to go, they have no one to look up to, just let them be there for that.
We know that there are plenty of churches and synagogues and mosques in this town. We also know that young people are not going to them. Nod your head if you're not going to church, right? Okay, so how can, as the president of the Carbondale Interfaith Council, I have a question for you. How can we, the religious community, make our guidance available to you, the students, in a way that you'll accept it?
Just reaching out, personally, like reaching out to the community more than just, maybe not expecting as much that we come, because we don't think about coming.
You don't think about going to church, right?
We don't think about it because we're stupid and we're young and we're just like, oh yeah, I was raised in that, whatever. But coming from somebody who was raised in religion and then kind of questioned it and kind of was like, like I just now as a senior am kind of going to be like, even though for a while I wasn't very religious, like, maybe there is some like questioning, but I still don't go to church. I kind of get that idea from people who have been talking to me. People who, socialize, because at this age, we're socializing.
Exactly.
We're not always going places, we're talking to the people that are convenient to us. So kind of reaching out and just being around.
I'd like to add that as a research question is how can the religious community reach you? Okay, not you come to us, but how can we reach you? What form would that take? And you are all communicating in very novel fashions, and we're old. So you have to teach us how to do this. Yes, back in the back.
Well, I was always taught that in order to be spiritual, that you didn't have to be in a church. That spirituality takes place anywhere. So maybe churches could do more outreach work, and you come to the students, not try to get the students to come to your
I think
church.
it's the how. It's the how we do that. Yes.
And I could say, going to church on Sunday, like that whole week, I would have a good week. I look forward to going to church on a Sunday. I haven't been in a couple 3 Sundays, because I'm still with my mother, but going to church on Sunday, it will make your week even better.
So he's talking about guidance, not necessarily instruction or dogma, but just being there.
I just know like a lot of churches have youth groups. What if we did something like with the youth groups where they came out to the community instead of like, because I know they have youth group meetings and stuff, they have usually like in the basement of the church or like at a school or something. What if they did something like
On campus, yes. Jim, did you have your hand up?
I taught for years at Sparrow, an old prison near Chicago, and was there as a volunteer. And basically, faith-based groups came all the time. And if you want to think of one of the worst hellholes in the world, think of Stateville or Menard. And I never could understand why faith-based people would come in and pray with the men, and not when they left the prison look up to the Lord and say, God, why do you let this place exist? I think if the church is to be relevant, it has to be by its practice, and that to show people that it really cares. There's no church that's so poor, that has such a little congregation, that it doesn't have people who have resources, who can teach, or who can help. And I don't think the churches have fulfilled their responsibility, particularly with people coming from prison.
Thank you, James. Yes, back in the back.
I was going to say in response to your question, possibly like a RSO fair, where on campus there used to have a church, really church related.
We were there this fall. We were there, and we actually did an outreach dinner at University Baptist Church on Oakland, and we had about 40 students who came to that. So the Interfaith Council did do an outreach, but we need your help to do better outreach.
One of the most important research findings I saw there was that everyone has a story. Now, it's one thing to serve food in the community room in the church, but to make those people know that they are completely welcome in the congregation, and then to use their stories as sermons, not only in the church to wake up the sleepy in church, but to be part of the coalitions that wake up the city, because he's right, it's a structural issue. And if we hear a story, I think those of us who are associated with the church ought to be the voice of the voiceless. And that is something that in this country, in this culture, has died out. We do not speak on behalf. I've been waiting for the Roman Catholic Church and its black bishops to
It's
say
his church,
something
by the way.
about-
He can say that.
but I could go around the denominational table.
Sure.
I'm waiting for the black Catholic bishops to make a statement about Michael Brown and Ferguson. Only one has. I haven't heard the Catholic Church. The Catholic bishops did their annual national conference 3 weeks ago and spent 5 hours discussing, and I don't make this stuff up, a document on pornography.
Okay, we'll let that one
No, let me finish. But at that same time, prison reform, homelessness, and the destruction of the black body in our cities was not being talked about. The call has to be, if they are silent, mute, or voiceless, somebody has to speak for them. And that's the role of the churches to answer that question.
Thank you. We're going to choose another pastor to speak up. Pastor Insuk is with Grace Methodist Church in Carbondale.
Even the churches are facing some declining and being weakened and struggle to reach out to young generation and even the marginalized people, yet I feel believe that church has compassion and heart to help the people who are marginalized. We don't know how to be engaged even in the community and in the outside people. So I'm thinking if people like you create some kind of a grace margin,
A grace margin?
grace margin, which is a safe place for anybody. That could be like a discussion group like here, or some fellowship with the meals. Invite the church leaders and homeless people come together to get to know one another and listen to their stories.
Could you describe what your church does on Sundays?
Yes, that I think the churches will go back to their places and raise the issue and empower congregations.
Grace Methodist cooks a meal weekly?
Not weekly, once every 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
They deliver it to the pavilion.
That's as a youth ministry.
And they interact with
mission.
homeless people there.
So I still have faith and hope in churches, and we can utilize and educate congregations, but we need some bridge people.
With the young people.
And if young people are willing to do that, I think congregations are responding more passionate.
Yes.
At a church back home, every other week we'd have a bus that would go pick up homeless people like in the specific areas that they were known to gather. They'd come back to the church. We have one room for small prayer room. We have another room for like a clothing room. So like people bring their people bring like suits that people can have for like a job interview or something like that. And then we would have like the main room, which was like just like the food room. Everyone would donate food and stuff like that. And, like the way that we got students involved is that they ran it. We all ran it, and we just we were all volunteering. So and we were still getting the word and all of that still, but like at the same time we were running everything. So. I don't know,
So a student-led effort, yes.
Like we said in our presentation, how like we should get SIU students to help more by maybe making it a class and they get credit for it, or they get volunteer hours for it or something. Then it would give students more of an incentive to be more involved in the community.
Quicker than you, yeah.
I'm actually taking a volunteer class, and I volunteer at the homeless shelter. And she was saying there's people that donate food to them every day, like lunch and dinner. And I just think that is a great thing to do.
Yes.
And another thing that can be done is there's so many events that are done on campus, and I feel like it would be it would show a lot of effort to go and try to tag along on those events, like showing up, like churches or organizations showing up to events that are campus-wide events or even small events that you're invited to, showing up and just speaking about what needs to be done, and kind of making aware to you that even if there isn't an incentive, even if there isn't something that you're getting out of it, these people are just the same as you. These people are, there's kids that are homeless, there's kids that are on the street. These are the people that are supposed to be our future as well, not just us that are in college.
And so it was like emotional appeal,
yeah.
Which goes back to what Father Brown said, get the stories out there, right?
It's that any moment we could lose every financial thing that's supporting us. At any moment we will be just like that.
Yeah. Kathy, you want to give a testimony here?
Well, it's not a testimony, but it's to speak to what the churches can really do. I think all the volunteerism is great, the charities, fine, all of that. You must stand with them, and you must allow the homeless refuge. You must allow them a place to organize themselves in their interest, because they know what they need. They know what the problems are. They're the ones facing it day in and day out. And you're right, it could be you tomorrow. It could be anybody in this room could be homeless tomorrow. This is a structural problem in today's economic system that is not going away overnight. And it is only getting worse. I became homeless in the early 80s. That was the beginning of this type of homelessness. You kids have never known anything but that now. That's what you spoke to about Chicago, where you grew up and seen all the homeless. That didn't exist before the 80s. Now, and back
Wait a
then,
minute.
you were out.
In some populations.
Not on this scale, no. It did not exist like this. You do not have families homeless and children, 3 million children in America homeless. That was unheard of back then. We had programs that really spoke to poverty at one time in this country. Those have been and are being eliminated daily. And that is Democrats and Republicans. So we've got to look to solutions that involve a broad section of society that sees this and understands that the homeless really are the flashpoint. They are at the head of a movement to change society.
I'd like to point out that Kathy Talbot is actually a national advocate for homelessness, so she's a resource for all of you students. You should add her to your list of key informants if you haven't.
She's not where I need to be today. I love you, baby girl.
This is Tina. Jim?
I'd like to pick up on what she just said, is that we have to, what I think, I like the program, I like your presentation, but I think there's a weakness. One, when we talk about government should do more. It really is, we're in a state of failing budgets, we're in a state that is on the verge of bankruptcy, and there really should be more study on what kinds of programs emanating from the people themselves as to what can be done. And I think that and I think you alluded to it, what can we do? I think we have to show people what they can do, but the emphasis should be on the people themselves, and that let them come up with their own solutions, etc. And that I think that's a failure. It's one thing to give people dinner, it's one thing to give them a house for the night, but that doesn't solve a problem. The problem is systemic, as you said. And then unless you think of it, there are groups of self-help groups, the Low, where people come together like Alcoholics Anonymous, but in a different vein, where people who have been there helping each other. And I think we have to create a venue where that can happen. I agree, charity is nice, bed is nice, but until we deal with the systemic part of this, we're going to be having the same old, same old.
And you mentioned a theory in your research, the culture of poverty theory. Can someone speak to that for us? Did you mention the culture of poverty theory in your research? Can someone give us, maybe Donna, a brief explanation of what that framework means?
You guys remember what that was? There's one theory that's used to explain the cause of homelessness. And it's basically blaming it on the person who's homeless. That it's their fault, they should just get a job, get a house to live in. And that's basically a very broad view in the United States.
That's why we have Trump. That's why Trump does so well.
Yeah, yeah.
When you send him to space, he's going to get lost in space.
Yeah. So, but our results showed that it wasn't a matter of choice, or some homeless people actually said I had a lack of responsibility, I didn't further my education. Some admitted faults like that, but we found a lot of other things that were just out of their control that were contributing to the problem. So our conclusion was we didn't think our results support that theory.
I don't think it did either, because a lot of people that we interviewed had a lot of them had some college, and so that definitely broke that stereotype that a lot of us held before we had this.
Tina, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think it's good that we're talking about bringing awareness to the community in Carbondale. But like I said, I was homeless for 5 years, and I was one of the women sent out there for Carbondale begging, panhandling, okay? And they want to call it begging or peddling or whatever. I call that survival. There's things I need, not just a cigarette, and I don't drink, and I'm not using drugs. So it wasn't for that. My money was for a place to stay and stay off the streets.
Because you had security issues.
But then when they were aware and finally figured out what we were doing, people quit giving us money, and we were treated less than human beings. And that is a big issue with me. Just because I'm homeless, you form an opinion, you keep that opinion. Well, she's homeless, she's never going to matter anything, so she's nothing. Well, yeah, I am. And so is the rest of them. But so many people that are homeless are really hard to approach and really hard to get them to talk. So everybody needs to be aware of that too.
Thank you, Tina.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, thank you.
I think that was part of my question. Where did you go to them, or did they come to you?
We went to
We went to them.
I would say it was kind of like a mixed effort. It was that we went to locations or, like organizations that were helping, people in hard times that were homeless. And then we found people that were willing to volunteer. So people who were willing to talk to us. So it was kind of like a meet in the middle sort of thing.
So I know you said you came to our Feed the Street program. So you went out, I think somebody said in the woods or wherever it is. So you went out in the community.
Yeah, we went.
If you thought somebody was homeless, you addressed them or
No,
how
we
did
had
that?
some, we had some organizations helping us where
Okay.
people came to get meals, and we asked for volunteers in those settings.
And some people wanted to speak with us, and some people just sat there and ate their meals. So whoever just was like, oh, I don't mind being interviewed today. And so we just sat there, they were eating their food, and we just had a conversation.
I just want to check with the audience how much more time you'd like to spend. There's more time allowed. Do people, because I notice some people are beginning to leave. Yes, and
I'd like to shift focus a little bit from Carbondale to Chicago. 25% of the folks you spoke with said there was home in Chicago. And I have no idea what that means, because if they're homeless in Carbondale, Chicago's not home. Home is where they are. So I wonder if you can disaggregate the data a little bit to help us understand that rather interesting statistic.
you want to answer that?
I think that the 25% that said they were homeless in Chicago was they were transitioning. They came down here and then became homeless.
Okay, so
But
that's
they
where
were
they started.
but they were from Chicago. That's what it was.
And what I remembered was 25% of their children were living in Chicago.
So they had family there or something.
Yes.
Yes. A lot of them had college degrees, and I'm just wondering, were those SIU students that came here and then became homeless afterwards? That's what I'm
Father Brown has done some research on that. Diana?
I have a question about the children. You ask people if they had children. If you ask my dad if he has children, he's going to say yes, but he doesn't actually have children. He has adult children. Were you only saying yes if they had children who were underage?
No, we asked if they had children, and then we asked how old were they.
Okay, so when you gave a mean age of 10, is that including some children who were 26 years old? And so when you say they were living on their own, does that include children who were 26 years old living on their own?
Yes.
Yes.
It does.
Yes, it includes little children too. It's the mean age of all the kids.
But they were older than 18 as well, is what we're saying.
Yeah, the whole range, but the mean was 10.
If you look at the standard deviation, it was 10 plus 2 is 80% of the population. Right? And standard deviation away.
Oh, thank you.
Am I quoting statistics incorrectly? So it was 10 with a standard deviation of like 2.5. So 12.5 represents 75% of the population.
12.5.
That's a lot of kids under 12. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one kids under 12.
Yes, and so
I learned again that homeless issue is a very complex issue in every level. We have a tendency to focus on the acts of mercy. We try to give away something for their physical needs, but academic community can contribute to do more research on how to deal with systematic area and what we can do as a community to participate in the systematic change. Yes, we are losing trust in our government, but we are government. We still have a power to make changes in policy makings. So probably not many churches will be involved in systematic issue, but maybe academic community can help us in research and come up some practical steps and suggestions how we can be involved in that process.
thank you. And this field research class that you've just accomplished has already begun to stir new conversations within the wider community. Kathy?
I just want to say one thing. I know a lot of people, I hear this a lot, that the reasons for homelessness are varied and complex. Not really. There's a lack of affordable housing and poverty. Those two issues should not even be out there in today's modern times. We have an abundance of everything anybody ever needed to live a full, secure, cultured life. 10 billion people can be fed by the food grower. There's only 7 billion on the face of the planet. 100,000 die a day from lack of food and lack of clean water. All of this stuff, public, is now being privatized by corporations. If you don't have the money to buy, you don't get it. So housing is one of those. Our government, at one time we had a really good public housing stock in this country. They're basically getting rid of that. They're privatizing it. They're not building the kind of housing we need today. We have 129, I think, if my numbers are right, million empty housing units. The government bought it from these, from the foreclosure crisis and the banking crisis. 129 million empty housing units that our government, and if we're the government, we own it. So we can start making demands on our government.
So there's a need for a reorientation of how we even look at this issue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy, for that. Peter?
So if you take Kathy's argument from a macro perspective, what is important about what you've done is shown us how this macro picture actually exists here in our town. In support of Father Brown's point and others about stories, I have a two-part question about research. First, when you interviewed people in the different places that you did, not the key informants, but the homeless themselves, did you write down their stories and did you write down quotes? And the second part of that is, will those quotes be in a larger report? Is there going to be a larger report where those are reflected, as happens in qualitative research? And that's important from the point of view of Sparrow Coalition, because those stories are compelling and need to be shared with the people in the city government and others that we're working with. So did you collect stories and did you, submit them together and help you develop your themes? And second, is there a wider report that's going to come out with those quotes included?
I know the male that I interviewed, he had a really touching story, and as I'm sitting there, he's putting this all on me. So I am trying to write down as much as possible, but the most meaningful things he told me, I was making sure that I wrote word by word what he was saying to put into our research. As far as what we're going to do with after this, I'm not really sure. We were just trying to get the research for this.
The lady that I spoke with at Bethel AME, I wrote, same as Lauren, I wrote down everything she said, and she did tell me her story about how she lost her house last May and just different things that happened in her life. She was one of the people that was from Chicago but moved down here and then ended up becoming homeless when she was down here. In the last 7 years she's been here, she became homeless last May in 2014. So, but I did write her story down, but like Lauren said, after that, I'm not sure.
Tell them about your paper.
Oh yeah, I'm a part of the publication group. My group member, she's in the back, and we're putting the whole paper together. Basically, we had different groups, like the introduction section, the literature review section, the methodological section, and they've all given us their summaries of all our research put together, and we're the people that are actually putting the paper together. So we're going to submit it for publication.
Can I make one brief comment about churches? First of all, a lot of them are hurting. Our church, we don't even get enough donations to support our ministry and utilities. If we didn't have people that had donated years ago that were pulling from those old accounts, we wouldn't even have the doors open. Because young people don't come anymore, so many people don't come to churches anymore. Numbers have decreased significantly in churches. And so a lot of churches are barely scratching to make their own needs met. They cannot just give handouts generously to all these homeless, My minister suggested something today in our meeting. If maybe churches could each adopt a homeless person or two. If each church would adopt a person or two, or how many they could, and get them an apartment, get them to the social services, get them to the doctor, a lot of them have health problems, get them a medical car, you know, and if each church could do that, you would at least be helping some people. And this was something she suggested, and also, here's another thing, the churches came up with the idea of, okay, the city, we're gonna be an emergency homeless shelter, okay? We'll start next Sunday. Oh, no, you won't. You have to have a permit, and you have to have a permit process, and you have to have the community be able to respond to where you wanna have this homeless warming center, whatever. And you have to have the community say and object if they want to. And so, you know, this process can take months, which was a good start. By the end of the spring, and we were hoping that we could get something started for this winter.
Right.
But
Thank you. So,
we can't do it.
Kathy?
I just want to relay one example of something that happened out, I believe in San Jose. Now this is the area where you've got the Bay Area, where you have the high-tech industry, billions and billions and billions of dollars. Not started in dollars. I think it was. Anyway, the homelessness out there is so bad. It is so bad. And the prices of the housing is going way, way up. So one of the churches opened its doors to people and let them in. And the city came after them. You know, they barred the doors and wouldn't let them in. Said, God told us to do this and we're doing it. So, you know, you have that, and then you have others who are scared to death and won't take that kind of path, of course.
No, the police could come in and bar your doors, send people out. Yeah.
Okay, so we're still going back to the research itself.
I'm going to, a couple of things here. One thing is, I say this to the interfaith, which is we need to go to our mayor and make the city businesses accountable. They want to bring back businesses in the community, make them accountable for at least having a percentage of unemployed, poverty-stricken people. They're part of their employment. We need to make them accountable, because the thing is that they taking money from us. Well, not even say taking, but they, you know, whatever. Okay, they're taking money from us as a business. So as a business, they ought to put back into the community where they reside.
So there should be a reciprocity between
Definitely.
business and social,
And social right.
welfare.
Sure,
Right.
so that
Right.
these young people, as well as so that the homeless people can find a place. I mean, you know, it probably don't pay them much, but it's something that's more than nothing.
I want to mention an elephant in the living room, which most of you are probably aware of, but our state government does not have a budget. And Southern Illinois is not receiving its fair share of social service funding. I know Mike's program has had some severe losses for their soup kitchen, which is a state-funded service. Camille, you want to speak at all about their agency?
Our agency provides affordable housing. That's predominantly what we do, with supportive services in place. And the supportive service piece has been pretty much put to a halt
From the
since the
state
state budget has not passed. But with that comes, you know, far worse times if we don't get this straightened out, because unfortunately throughout the state, not just my program, throughout the state, the funding that comes from the state was used for federal match to be able to provide housing, affordable housing. Approximately, I'm going to say 40 of my units of housing, affordable housing, will go away if we don't have that match, and it's typically been state funded.
Is affordable housing income based?
Yes.
Yeah, because I recently went online and was calling people for low income housing. They don't have any here in Carbondale, period. And they were like, well, check Marion, they don't have any more. So like,
This actually, people aren't aware, this is a poverty zone. This is one of the most impoverished economic areas in the country. If you go to the Sparrow Coalition's website, sparrowcoalition.org, you'll find a lot of helpful information about poverty and homelessness locally. We are focused, we have other research on our website, but you can find out a lot that's going on right here about what's pending with our state government neglecting social service funding.
I'd like to encourage you students to get active politically too. I mean, to contact who these three state representatives and congressmen are and tell them this is something that concerns me, especially when you've done this study. You can say, we've been a part of this and we are really concerned on what's happening in this area. And I think, you know, it doesn't hurt to inundate the governor's office and the representatives and senators with that, hey, somebody is knowing there's a problem out here and that we think you ought to do something about it.
I'd like to give you a target to call Senator Daniel Biss, B-I-S-S. He's the chair of the Human Services Committee for the Senate, the state of Illinois, and he was here November 9th doing hearings with our social service agencies. And we had 3 hours of hearings, which were very devastating, reporting out of what will happen once the state budget is passed. Senator Biss is very sympathetic. I think if students start calling him, I think he'll definitely get his attention. He's not resistant at all. I've been talking to him, you know, personally, but go forward and interact with your state government as well. Abby?
And also what the churches can do, there is a movement in other parts of the country that started in North Carolina called the Moral Mondays movement. Reverend Barber, who also heads up his own areas, NAACP started that there. Well, he didn't just start it, he's one of the main spokespersons. This is spread throughout the South. Chicago, the churches are getting involved. The more progressive, socially conscious churches are out there. They're protesting and making it visible that there's support out there for the homeless, support out there for those in poverty, support out there for those losing their schools. There's so many issues out there, so many, all related to this economy. And I want to say one thing about Illinois. We are the 5th largest state, the 5th largest economy, $720 billion, 12 million people. That is the equivalent of over $60,000 per person in this state. There's plenty of wealth out there, plenty of money. It's just not showing where it needs to go.
I'd like to close and Jim made a point to give you a chance to talk informally with each other. So, Dr. Reese, would you like to say something before we close? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all so much for coming. I think this town is developing more and more awareness. We've had a number of meetings. The Sparrow Coalition has been holding public community meetings at the Carbondale Public Library, which has been facilitating the growth of this movement. It's a social action movement, and I think something will be done in Carbondale about this problem. So,
I want to thank the students who are really
Cool. Thank you.
Also, if we could have a round of applause for Dr. Reese, she has been awesome, and we just want to thank her.